So the most recent book that I've read is called Embodied, Transgender Identities, the Church, and What the Bible Has to Say. And it's by a Bible scholar named Preston Sprinkle. So I wanted to read this because, it's obvious, right, that this conversation is a major one in our society today. I've had the conversation about same-sex relationships in a variety of settings and recently had a good episode on the podcast. But this topic is something that I haven't really delved into as deeply. And so I wanted to kind of begin to get a better idea. And I have previously, but I haven't really started to delve deeply into it. And so this is kind of, it was a book that I thought, this could be a starter pack sort of for getting to know more about this whole subject. And it was pretty good. I think, I want to give this book a good rating for its intention. So, I'd probably give it maybe like around a 7, between 6.5 and 7.5. Really, because I appreciated the intention of the author. Sprinkle he's really built a major part of his career around this whole topic and has tried really, really hard to bridge the gap between the Christian community and the LGBTQ community. And he's largely focused on the transgender identity and the transgender community. I think there were a couple of ways that, I was expecting what he said in terms of his conclusions. But I think there was a lot that he was talking about in this book that was very helpful. His goal, and you can kind of see this, this comes out really clearly throughout the text, is that his goal is to humanize this whole community and to really empower particularly people of religion to be willing to integrate with these people in community and to, not see them as other, but to, be unified with them. And that's the main purpose. And so throughout this text, he really focuses on a lot of the relationships that he has had with people of the transgender community. And he talks a lot about what he has learned from them and all of the great things about them. So that's the positive. That's why I would say this is a good book. I think the intention behind it is clearly very, very good. A couple of negative things, I would say, primarily two, are one, I think it's somewhat easy to see the bias in terms of his conclusion. So ultimately, Sprinkle is not necessarily affirming of, the whole transgender identity ideal. I think that this is in line with a lot of his other thoughts about similar issues. But he does make it clear, the one thing that he does make clear that he disagrees with is specifically the idea that transgender people who identify as transgender should not transition. And he talks all about some studies with science, the science of this, and some reasons for that. But ultimately, I do think that you can kind of see the bias in terms of where the sort of conservative evangelical space sees this and how this conclusion comes out, specifically in terms of how they interpret the data. And so this is part of that. I think Sprinkle, he does try to convey a wide array of data, but specifically cherry picks in some ways. Cherry picks in terms of some of the stories that he tells of people who transitioned and then didn't like it and detransitioned and would advise against that. And he also, I think cherry picks a little bit the data in terms of the outcomes of kind of the ultimate well-being of people who are in this community. But as I said, this is not something that I am greatly versed in. And so I would have to look much deeper into the data to see that. It just seems like it from some of the things he downplays the more kind of pro-transgender studies and focuses a lot more on those that are kind of anti. But the other tough thing, and this you can kind of see just from the subtitle of the text, which is how the Bible, maybe what the Bible has to say about this whole issue. And the way, I think something that I largely disagree with, for all of the good that Preston Sprinkle does in his work, a way that I largely disagree with him on most things is the way that he approaches the Bible, because it seems like he does approach the Bible from this vantage point that it is sort of the ultimate and infallible standard of truth and authority. And I don't believe that the Bible can be that for us. So in this text, he talks about, here are some of the things that the Bible says. And that in and of itself is problematic, because the Bible isn't unified in what it says. Certain theologians have to try really, really hard to systematize what the Bible is saying by taking all of these different things and sort of making them jive with one another, which on the face, they don't. And ultimately, the Bible really says a lot of different things. So anyway, he does that. He takes the systematized version of what the Bible says about some of these things and interprets it in the particular way that, evangelicals tend to, and draws his conclusions from that. And so I think that's something that is unhelpful in terms of how we use the Bible and how we approach the Bible. So that's the second problem here. And I would say those are kind of the major flaws in this discussion. However, again, the intention is great. I think that the actual work that Preston Sprinkle has done in bridging the gap between the standard Christian community and the transgender community, I think is great work. And so I applaud all of that work that he's done in that space. So I would say read this book, and, it's one of those things where you have to eat the fish and spit out the bones. But it was helpful for a start, at least in trying to understand some of the language and the ways that some people think, and even how to be sensitive to people in this community and have conversations. That's something that Preston Sprinkle really does do a great job of conveying, because he really does intentionally seek community and relationship with everybody in this space. So overall, pretty good book. I would recommend it to anybody. I would say, there are certainly other texts that I need to read and that should be read in conjunction with this one, just understand this more. But I think the model that this provides is actually build those relationships. That's an important thing to do as well. So there you go. Some good, helpful starting pieces for this whole conversation. Enjoy.